Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you're driving along in your car, your truck, or in public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the scams to do with, and there's many of them, to do with mass migration, particularly the supposed education sector, where there are what are referred to as diploma mills. That is places where the so-called university, they've typically got pretty impressive websites, but you go to the address that they cite on, which sometimes isn't that easy to find, but and you find that it's got it's in some little back street somewhere with a door, an old door that looks like it's never been opened. So there is no university there. It exists as something online, and it's just a diploma mill. And I had no idea how easy it is to sort of get degrees from these places. You call up and just say your name's Billy Bob and your address and what do you want the degree in? I want it in rocket science. Done. And they send it out to you. You give them the $100, and it's that's it. It's pretty straightforward, or more than $100 depending on the degree. But so these degree mills, and they're typically all run by primarily Indian and some Chinese type play, but it's all part of the wider mass migration scam, and that's what I want to sort of focus on, the various pieces of the mass migration scam. Now, we talk about one of the first things about the scam is the amount of fake labour hire organisations that exist in the West now, and the amount of these diploma mills. Now, in a place like Sydney, you can have well over 100 of these diploma mills. Again, targeted particularly at Indian people, but Chinese as well, but particularly Indian. And just on the subject of Indians, in Australia, there are supposedly 850,000 Indians in Australia who have emigrated over the last several years. I mean, look at 850,000, for goodness sakes. And they live in Australia, but they're born in India. Now, on top of the well over 1 million that are now born in Australia from migrants that came in the first wave, and then on top of that, nearly 2 million Indian students, for fuck's sake, in Australia. So if you add up the population of, getting on for, 20% plus of the population are now Indian, and they live very much, they don't integrate, they live very much in their own communities. They only marry each other. In fact, they send back to the village of their ancestors for partners. They can be 5 generations, 6 generations Western born and still claim to be Indian and live, wear Indian clothes, eat Indian food, and live very much in an Indian little bubble and enclave. You can't imagine a worse migrant than that live in their own little bubble enclave. That is the most damaging to any country they come to, and it's damaging to Australia or Britain or anywhere else. Now, they are a small number, typically Christian Indians that do integrate, but this is if you look at the Hindu Indians, the integration rate is less than 1%. So, and that, again, that's over multiple generations. So I just want to go through the things that are going on here, just so you get an idea of the scale of what's happening. Now, more than half the students in Australia, at least according to the numbers I've been able to dig up, half of them are getting qualifications from these diploma mills. They're not attending any genuine course or anything like that, but they're able to use these diploma mill qualifications to be able to apply for citizenship and permanent residency, which many of them get off these fake degrees. Now, I can give you an idea, and I've mentioned in other videos, the extent of pretty much every Indian I've ever hired has had fake qualifications, or they've just bribed to get their degree. It may have been from a prestigious Indian university, but they're upper class, social caste. They're upper class people who can bribe lecturers or university administration to give their son or daughter a prestigious degree, and it's considered as a part of a social rite of passage. The idea, if you're an upper class person, that you actually have to work hard and pass exams is unthinkable, if not laughable to them. So the degree, again, is part of just their social status, a reflection of it. I can afford to bribe the people at the university to give me this degree. There you go. That's proof of my social status. So when you actually want to do any work and say, okay, you've got a PhD in computer coding or computer science, and then they look at you blankly. They can't cut a single line of code to save their lives, and they think it's rather, or did I don't know about today necessarily, but certainly when I was hiring a lot of Indians, they would look at me and think that I was rather strange, that I would expect them to know anything about computer. I mean, just because I got a PhD in computer science doesn't mean that I know anything about it. It's a social prestige sort of. Yeah, it's a badge of social prestige. Doesn't mean anything, you idiot. And this is very much, again, the Indian attitude. So if they get diplomas, these diploma mills and so on, then who cares if it's genuine or not? It doesn't matter. It's not a reflection of whether they've learned anything or they're competent in anything. And if you want to hold them to a standard of competence and knowledge, then you're the problem, not them. Very much their view. Now, what happens when these Indians by the million come in for these diploma mills? Well, there's a few things to sort of consider here. In some cases, when you get a temporary visa, say a work visa, you're required to in many cases, not all, to say go and work for 3 weeks out in the farming community, helping bring the crops in. I don't know, pick the apples and that sort of work, and they go out to do this, but then they've got a very organised scheme of corruption. So they'll go to the farmer and say, look, Krishna's not going to really do any work. They're going to be lazy and useless, and they've never done a day's work in their lives. But I tell you what, we'll give you $300 for all the Krishnas that have been sent out here, and we'll take them off your hands, and then you can just say that they weren't really very good, and you can get others. So farmers are in on this, and they ask for an oversupply of people. So if they really want 10 fruit, for example, 10 fruit pickers, they'll ask for 30 fruit pickers, and because they know that there's going to be a mix of folks in that where there'll be an organised corruption scheme. So someone will come to them, and the Irish are in on this as well, actually. But they'll come to them and say, "Look, we'll give you $300 a head." Now, some of these Indians and more so the Irish say that they've got they can go to better paying jobs fairly quickly, whereas the Indian guy can't go to a better job and may just be going to work flipping burgers in a takeout food place. So the owners of the takeout food place, the burger flipping outfit, they will go to the farmer and pay a few $100 to release that work, because that work is more benefit to them than it will be to the farmer. So it pays them to pay the corrupt make a corrupt payment to get the guy onto their takeout food shop. So there's massive layers and levels of corruption going here. To the farmer, it's not a bad gig. You've got some guy who really is going to be pretty useless at picking fruit, at the end of the day. So why don't you just take the $300, get rid of him, and find someone else who's maybe a more willing worker, who's maybe got a background at labouring or something like that. So there's a lot of corruption in and around that. But the Indians or others, there's some Chinese too, have arrived on the basis they're going to be students and they're studying, and so when they're not, there's over 1 million of them just doing this diploma mill stuff. But the government they talk tough every now and again, but Western governments generally seem very reluctant to crack down on this, and they could easily do it. I was looking at some information out of Canada, some of the not very large cities, and they've got 100 diploma mills just in the one, just in a smaller to mid-sized city. So it gives you an idea of the extent of it, just how international it is. Now, the other thing that where it now again, once these people are out in the the community and the workforce, and they may get maybe they're allowed as students to work 10 or 15 hours a week, but that's meaningless. They just work in the black economy, and they don't work in any paid salary or paid wage sense. They're packed 25 to a 2-bedroom apartment. The apartment is owned by the people that own the takeout food shop, the offshore Indian financiers and investors. And so their salary and income's all packaged up with accommodation and food and so on. So they can work that person 60, 70, 80 hours a week, the Indian worker, flipping burgers, whatever it might be. Whilst ostensibly they're supposed to be studying, but they're doing nothing of the sort. They've arrived effectively as black economy labour, and this is hugely widespread. And again, there seems to be a reluctance by the government or the unions or anyone to really crack down on this. Now the other thing too is say in the private rental market where you can get 20 people plus to a 2-bedroom apartment, or 30 people to a 4-bedroom house and all this sort of thing. These people, when they pool their resources and their income as cleaners and burger flippers, they've still got quite a decent income in totality. And so private landlords can look at this and say, okay, well, we're really only supposed to let 5 people live in this property. That's kind of the rules and the local regulations and statutes and whatever, ordinances and so on. But what we'll do, we'll just look the other way when you put 30 people in there. But in return, we want you to pay double what the market rent is. So the market rent just in round numbers, the market rent is $100, but you're gonna have to pay $200, and you're paying me that extra amount because I'm going to look the other way on the illegality of how many of you are staying here. So this artificially forces up rents. So this idea that every Indian or every immigrant that comes to Australia or student that ever gets their own private property and their own private residence, and they live one person per dwelling, that's absolute bullshit. And this is often used to say, well, look how many houses we need. We need lots of houses. Look at this, 1 million people coming in. That's 1 million houses. No, it's not. It's nowhere near that. And many of these people are living, again, just examples I've seen firsthand. 11 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment and 17 people living in a very compact 2-bedroom apartment, and it goes on. So this is artificially forcing up the price of rents because they're living in such large numbers. This is more the case as you get closer into the downtown of the city. You don't see it so much in the outer suburbs. So now the other thing is, if you look at where the black economy jobs are, takeout food, cleaners, that's widespread, and labour hire scams, of course, also beauty salons, painting nails and so on. So this is not only undermining wages and undermining work structures and also undermining businesses. For example, a business that has no hope of surviving if it has to operate in proper market competitive conditions, no hope of surviving, is only surviving because they can access cheap peasant labour from overseas, and they can do income packaging scams with accommodation and food and so on, so that no one's paying any tax. So not only are you having a business that otherwise couldn't possibly survive under proper market conditions, they've also put it together so they don't pay a nickel in tax. And this is hurting everybody in the economy, not them, but hurting everyone in the economy, and it's undermining the integrity of a market competitive economy. Now, there was a recent, coming back to the Indians here, there was a recent documentary, I suppose, quite a fawning documentary, where Indian women are recounting their experiences of racism, racial slurs, evil white people, and it's all a propaganda thing, and done very much in the Indian style of Not so much that they were the subject or victims of racism, but they aren't sufficiently respected, and they have the view that they're spiritually and morally and culturally superior to Westerners, and therefore they're entitled to a mark of a degree of respect that they don't get from Westerners. Now remember, they come from a caste society, so they come to a society in the West that's, compared to them, very egalitarian, and so they don't understand why the the manual labourer doesn't accord them the deference and respect that somebody at the lower caste would if someone of the Brahmin caste in India. So they find this very difficult to comprehend and accept. In fact, consider it something of an outrage. And so they expect and demand and think they're entitled to this respect. They don't get it, and they then repackage that lack of respect as evil white racism, when it's really nothing of the sort. Now, these Indians rave on endlessly about evil white racism. Now, the question, and the interviewer, of course, gives them a soft, fawning interview. Oh, yes, those evil white racists, those fucking Nazis, they're everywhere. Hitler is everywhere. And they just go along with the nonsense. They don't ask the question. So I would ask, okay, so you're saying Australia is a racist place, institutional, evil white, yeah, race. Oh, you suffered racism every day? Terrible. Why did you come here? Then why did you stay? Why are you staying? You look like you're doing rather well. Why did you come here if it's so racist? And you tell everyone in India how racist it is, and they still want to come here. Why is that? If it's so racist, why did you come and why do you stay? They couldn't answer it, and because there isn't any racism, certainly nothing like the extent that they would gin up. Nonetheless, there's mass migration. There are entire government departments that are wall-to-wall Indian now. And it's very diversity, equity, inclusion. These people have never had a job in India, and it's their first job in Australia, and they're given quite a senior job, quite an important job, or the power to say no at least, and in the public service. And I've come across this personally a number of times, with bids and tenders and things like that for government department. You're dealing with an Indian with a very thick accent who's had the first job ever in her life and come straight off the plane or the boat and being gifted an affirmative action job immediately in the public service. And they're still acting and behaving like they're in downtown, India somewhere, and got no clue what they're doing. And yet these are the people you have to deal with. So this is very annoying and irritating for anybody. The reverse would be the case if white people were doing that in anywhere else, saying that being diversity, equity, inclusion high as in another country, we wouldn't be acceptable there, nor is it here. Now, these Indians are encouraged with taxpayer money to go and an NGO and taxpayer money. So it's all race hustling to write books about their experiences, about their endless racial slurs. And they'll do the smallest thing of saying that, what is a victim or being a victim of racism. For example, one lady says that instead of going with curry, taking curry to school, Indian curry, and going with a full-blown Indian cuisine thing, taking it to school, where she claims she's the only Indian in the school. Instead of doing that, she thought, well, it's easier to have a chicken salad sandwich or something than it is to have their the full-on Indian cuisine thing. Now, this is not a big deal. You're at school, you're trying to fit in, but the attitude is that I'm the one Indian in the school, and everybody must fit in with me. I don't have to make the slightest, not even the tiniest effort to fit in with them. And so she recounts that because of so much racism, the evil racism, fascist Nazi racism, Hitler personally was jeering at her about her Indian cuisine. And so she, well, it was just easier for me to have a chicken salad sandwich just to fit in, just to stop the racism, just to stop Hitler from constantly. So, but no, that's not it. You make an effort to fit in. As if I was in India or anywhere else, and I'm certainly well traveled, if anything. I eat the local cuisine. I make a point of doing it. I don't want to have, straight out Western cuisine when I go to India or, I don't know, Indonesia or South America or wherever. So I fit in with the local cuisine. Now, I'm staying in a Western hotel, so I actually do have the option if I want of a Western diet. But you want to go to Japan, I eat sushi and so on. So this is not a big ask. That she is presented by this woman as some humiliating experience that was forced on her by Hitler personally. But no, you're just eating a chicken salad sandwich. So you're fitting in with the kids at school, and you want to fit in, and so she perceives or explains that this it's just easier to choose the local cuisine in the interest of fitting in. But she packages it up as it's not fitting in. She's only having to do it as a result of the most evil and horrible, outrageous levels of oppression. That's the reason she's doing it, and she's only doing it to shut them up and to pretend to assimilate. But as soon as they're not watching anymore, she goes back to the curry and so on. Now she complains about the racism she suffers, as other women do, and it's a bit of a girly fest, this one. Complains about the racism she suffers. Yet when it comes to marriage and selecting partners, where does her partner? Does it come from? White people or other people, and does it come from even locally born Indians? No, she sends back to the village of her ancestors to select a husband straight out of India, who's never been outside of India. That's what they're doing. What? And you say the other guys are racist. So this is something, and this is a very big concern of mine. And I think it's getting worse. The government seems quite determined all over the Western world to understate the number of Indians that are in the West, and I think for obvious reasons, because the numbers are huge, and they don't want to spook the locals. So instead, they just tell lots of lies, lots of misrepresentation, and that'll fix it, that'll solve it, or accuse everyone of being Hitler who may question it. But we've got a situation here where, unless they address the issue of Indians integrating into Western society, if they don't address that, then the Indians will be in the majority given current trends of migration. Indians will be the majority in Australia within the next 30 years. And they'll be totally non-integrated. Their integration rate will be less than 1%. And so because of that total non-integration rate, they will be, in effect, the controlling influence in Australia. And I would suggest some other less populated Western countries. And the Indian government is desperate to get rid of their surplus population and is demanding, insisting, requiring that if Australia wants to do business with India, you better take our surplus population. And so they're exporting, hundreds of thousands. Indian students don't come to Australia to get an education. They come to Australia to use the education system as a teleporting mechanism to become residents or citizens in the West, same as they're doing in Canada and elsewhere. So, and these people will never integrate, and their demands for special treatment and special handouts and special gimmies is increasing by the day. And as their numbers increase, their clout, as they would see it, increases as well. And as they're not integrating, they become a completely separate substrata of society, demanding special treatment for themselves at the expense of everyone else. It's a disaster. It's a disaster, and it's a train that's hurtling at speed to the point of Armageddon. You've been fantastic about your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.